Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. Today we're going to be talking about the Kinks and the Arista Years, which is roughly 1977 and 1986, which were basically their most commercially successful years here in the United States. But we're also going to be talking about rock and roll musical snobbery, which drives me crazy and I feel the Kinks are a victim of. So let's talk about the Kinks, my second or third favorite band of all time. Now, I have every Kinks album, well, all the studio and officially released live albums. I have 69 Kinks albums as of today, and that doesn't include, I have every Ray Davies solo album and a whole bunch of Dave Davies albums as well. Now, the Kinks basically, in my opinion, are four periods. You have the original years, the Pie years, and all these old classic Kinks albums. And there's lots of different versions of them. There's the original versions, there's deluxe editions, there's box sets versions. So those are the original versions, okay? Then you got the RCA years, which is when they kind of did these showbiz type things. So it started with Muswell Hill, though. It was a great album. And Everybody's in Showbiz, we'll talk about that. And you get like Preservation and Preservation 2, and you get Soap Opera, and you got Schoolboys in Disgrace, and then the greatest hits, although they didn't really have any hits at that time. Then you get the Arista Years we're going to focus on, and then you got Ever Since Then, which was like some albums on MCA, and some independent releases, and the one on Columbia, Phobia. Yeah, I have all of the Kinks albums. I am a huge Kinks fan. I have a video where I talk about how I got into the Kinks, but basically, it is kind of important for you to know. Let's frame it. So, I'm born in 63. It is very early 1978, so I am 15 years old. I don't drive. I would ride my bicycle at least once a week to Woolworth to check out their cutout bins. And I was a subscriber to both Circus and Cream magazine. And every once in a while, they would do a story on the Kinks, and I would see pictures. And they didn't really look like a rock and roll band, because that was when they were doing these RCA vaudeville type shows. And they were really a cult band here in the United States, and really non-existent success over in the UK. The only songs you would ever hear on commercial radio here in the USA, you'd hear Lola, and you would hear occasionally You Really Got Me, and you would also hear occasionally All Day and All of the Night. That was it. And we're talking the early to mid-70s. They were a cult band at best. But there was a PR campaign at that time, God Save the Kinks. They just kind of struck me, and I'm out Woolworth, and I'm in the cutout bin, and I find an 8-track tape of Everybody's in Showbiz. And I talk more in depth about this, but I loved it, and especially the song Celluloid Heroes kind of changed my life. Then I quickly went out and found out a used record store, and I used to ride my bike all around and hit these stores, and I still do it to this day, except now I drive. And then I found the Kinks' Greatest Hits, which is this actual copy. And you got 10 tracks of the really early years. And this album changed my life as well. And then I found this one, the Kinks' Greatest Celluloid Heroes, which was the best of those RCA years, where the Kinks were at their lowest ebb commercially, really ever. Nobody was buying those albums, and they were getting no airplay. The story is I'm getting into the Kinks in a really fairly low period of their career, the RCA years. I'm starting with their most difficult music. I am a Kinks fan. That's what I'm trying to build you up with. 69 albums. I got everything. I know all these albums inside and out. My timing for me was perfect because in 1977, they released their first album on Arista. What happened was they met up with Clive Davis, who was running Arista, and he said to Ray Davies, "Listen, I appreciate your artistic genius, but you don't sell albums at all. You get no radio play. When you tour live, you're lucky if you could sell out a single night at a low-budget college. Do something that's easier on the ears, more radio-friendly." And they did. They put out Sleepwalker. And every once in a while, but not too often, I would hear on the radio the title track, Sleepwalker. And it was stuck in my memory bank. So now it's 78, a year later, I'm starting to get into the Kinks, and I picked up Sleepwalker. And this album blew me away. And in fact, my best friend Mike got into them through me, and he started listening to the Kinks. And we were like, this album is perfection. And from beginning to end. And I fell in love with this album, and this album is still to this day probably my most played Kinks album. You got Sleepwalker, a great track, but there's deep tracks. Life on the Road got a little bit of airplay at that time, but Mr. Big Man and Brother and Jukebox Music, that got some play. But even these songs that nobody knows, like Sleepless Night and Stormy Sky and Full Moon, that is a trifecta of amazing quality. It's fantastic. And then you got Life Goes On. It is a perfect album. This is a great version, if you can get this on Velvel, because they had, deluxe editions with bonus tracks. And you got Prince of the Punks, another one. Prince of the Punks about Tom Robinson. So this is an amazing album, and probably my most played album. This came out in 77, but I got it like 78 or 79. The next album they did in 78 was Misfits, and here's the original vinyl. Now, I kept this vinyl because it's actually got a different mix of Live Life than the CD. But this is the original vinyl that I got at that time. And personally, I like that album a lot. Love it, really. I mean, I played the hell out of these. I know every note. I didn't think it was quite as strong as Sleepwalker, but the title track, Misfits, to this day can make me cry. That's how incredible that song is. Rock and Roll Fantasy is one of the greatest songs of all time. I melt when I hear that. And, it's a really good record. Hey Fever is okay. Black Messiah is good. And Farland's okay. Permanent Waves is good. Live Life is a killer track. Different mix on the original vinyl. And then Out of the Wardrobe, About a Transvestite, that's a good one. And Trust Your Heart, Get Up. It's a really good album. And then, if you get this one, you got Father Christmas, which is my favorite Christmas song of all time. And that was a single, which I have downstairs as well. Misfits, A Fine Follow-Up. I got that in 78. Remember, I'm 15 years old. These guys are not really getting any kind of airplay. And my older sister is actually getting into the Kinks now because of me, because she's listening to my Kinks albums. I'm becoming a Kinks fanatic. And at the same time, I'm picking up some of these RCA albums as well. So I'm really getting a good mix of the Kinks. Lo and behold, 1979 comes. In fact, I should stop posting these. Let's do this here. There's a Sleepwalker, and there is Misfits. Let's put that up there so we can frame this in perspective. Let's do that. 1979 comes, and I buy, as soon as the album comes out, Low Budget. Now, the original album only had the footprints. It didn't actually say Low Budget on it. That was the first generation. And now the Kinks are cracking the commercial U.S. market. And they're getting radio play. And I bought this album, and it was such a thrill to have a band that you love that really very few, if any, people know. They're not getting much radio play. They're not selling a lot of albums. But they're on a rise. You could just feel it with Sleepwalker and Misfits. And they release the album, and it cracks. And now they're going to play an arena. And I'm going to show you at the end my ticket stubs. I finally get to see them live because they headlined the Nassau Coliseum, which was an arena here on Long Island. And Low Budget was just great, especially in its time. It opens up with Attitude, a real punk track, and Catch Me Now, I'm Falling, which takes the Jumpin' Jack Flash riff and expands on it. And you got Pressure and National Health, Wish I Could Fly Like Superman. Yeah, they kind of had that four on the floor disco beat, but it's not a disco song, but it's definitely got that disco influence, and I think that's the weakest song on the album. The title track, Low Budget's got amazing lyrics and great riff. Inner Space is fun. Little Bit of Emotion is an incredible Ray Davies ballad that just melts my heart to this day. It's a song that nobody knows, really, and it's amazing. You should hear Little Bit of Emotion. It's fantastic. Gallon of Gas, another great lyric, great riff, great commentary of what's going on. Misery is a rocker, and Moving Pictures is fun. Low Budget crosses over, becomes a success. The Kinks start playing arenas here in the United States, which is also wonderful because in 1979, when this came out, I'm all of 16 years old, but I can go to those shows. My parents drive me to the shows. They drop me off. They pick me up. They were awesome, my parents. And it was great to see the Kinks as a true rock and roll band. Not a band up there doing vaudeville from the RCA years. They're a rock and roll band, and they are just cooking. And most importantly, they got great killer songs. This is not sellout. This is not made to order because you can't plan. You could, in fact, when bands try to become commercial, is when they have their biggest failures. It's just synchronicity. They were working their way up from the dismal success of RCA, Arista. Ray Davies is producing these albums. Robert Ludwig is engineering this stuff so these albums sound great, and they do sound great. But most importantly, the songs are killer. Sleepwalker, Misfits, and Low Budget. What a time to be a fan of the Kinks. They're playing arenas, and they're selling them out. And they released their double live record, One for the Road. A fine double live album. My feeling even then, it had a little bit too much from Low Budget. But they even put the hard way on there, which is from the RCA album, Schoolboys in Disgrace. And the interesting thing is the Kinks are becoming kind of popular now, not just because of the Kinks, but because you got bands like Van Halen who covered You Really Got Me. They did Eruption and Into You Really Got Me, and most people at that time thought the Kinks version of You Really Got Me was a cover. They thought it was a Van Halen track. And later on, the Kinks would, of course, cover, Van Halen would cover Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Right there on One for the Road. People thought that was a Van Halen track, but of course it's a classic old Kinks track. And of course, the Pretenders had a huge hit with Stop Your Sobbin'. Nobody knew that song. That's a really deep cut. That's a Ray Davies Kinks song. It was just a great, great time to be a Kinks fan. And they were just hitting it on all cylinders. They even went back and did Celluloid Heroes, which is quite possibly my favorite Kinks song, along with Waterloo Sunset. Great version of Celluloid Heroes on this live album. So, great time to be a Kinks fan with that. The next album, which I saw on tour, I'll show you the tickets at the end, is Give the People What They Want. I think probably song for song, possibly, well, no, I'll stick with Sleepwalker. This would probably be my second favorite of the Arista Years. This is a killer album. And it starts off with Around the Dial. You get feedback. Somebody's flipping through the radio stations. You get this massive crunching Dave Davies riff. And they go right into Around the Dial. It's an amazing opener. Then it goes into Give the People What They Want, which is the weakest song on this album. And really the only song on this album that really is that weak. Killer's Eyes is great. Predictable is so much fun. Add it up. Well, you got Chrissie Hynde, because he was with Chrissie Hynde at the time. She's doing like moaning background on the back of it. Destroyer, yeah, they borrow to a certain extent. Paranoia will destroy you. But it's a fun song. Yo-Yo is amazing. Art Lover, one of the greatest ballads of all time from Ray Davies. Love that track to death. Little bit of abuse, and it ends with Better Things, which any other band would kill to have the quality of Better Things. It's incredible. Why that song is not played every day on the radio, I'll never understand. If you never heard the album Give the People What They Want, this is a fantastic album. Fantastic album. Unbelievable. Should be in every household and should get regular play. But that was really the last. No, they got one more after that was still really successful, but not quite as successful, you'll see. After that came State of Confusion. This actually had their biggest single, I guess, in America, which was, of course, the classic Come Dancing. Had a great video. And that's the story of his sister, who went dancing in the nightclubs in England at that time, and she actually passed away after a dance. But Come Dancing is a great track, and this is a really fine album. Again, it opens up with State of Confusion, basically basic rocker. Property is phenomenal. Don't Forget to Dance, another song that is beyond comprehension how great it is. So great. I remember my son was a little kid, and I would play that, and he would sing Don't Forget to Prance. It was just something that suited our family. But he was a little kid, and instantly he was like in love with that song. That's how great Don't Forget to Dance is. Young Conservatives, Heart of Gold's fine. This is a good album. It's not nearly as good as these. And the Kinks are now starting to lose a little bit of their massive commercial success. But they're still real successful, but they're no longer going to be able to sell like the arenas out. And they got one more Arista album, and that's a really good one that's completely overlooked, which is Word of Mouth. And this is an interesting one because Ray did a movie called Return to Waterloo, which is really cool. In fact, it's so cool. Let me show you how cool it is. I got on Laserdisc. And basically, you can see he's already falling out with Dave Davies during this. So this is like a Kinks album without Dave Davies on there. But a lot of these songs, see the songs right there? A lot of those songs they would redo and put them on word of mouth with Dave Davies. So that was that. But this is a overlooked album that's really good. And it had a great video. Do It Again was the original single. That got a little bit of MTV play, but it should have been a big smash. But a lot of these songs, Good Day, Sold Me Out, Massive Reduction, Too Hot, Missing Persons is great, Summer's Gone is great, Going Solo is great. These are little known tracks that are awesome, and it has a bad cover. In fact, the artwork on a lot of these, like State of Confusion's got the same artwork basically as Give the People What They Want. Not really sure about that, but the other ones have good artwork. This is a really fine album, and buried on this album for a long time was Living on a Thin Line, which is a Dave Davies song that he sang, and that song is the best song possibly on this album, and certainly one of the best Kinks songs ever. But I think it actually might have gotten picked up on The Sopranos. Not 100% sure of that. But Living on a Thin Line is amazing. And a highlight, certainly, of this album. So that's definitely one to also check out. Now, that was the end of the Kinks on Arista. They did release a compilation, and there's two different versions of it. Come Dancing with the Kinks. This is the original version. And then they re-released it, and they did some changes on the tracks. So they're both phenomenal. And it's a great summation of the Kinks' most successful commercial part of their career. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, so what? It was their most commercially successful time. That doesn't necessarily mean it was their best musically. And you're right. Being commercially successful does not equate with the quality of music. Except that you're wrong in this case, because this is truly amongst the greatest music the Kinks have ever produced. No doubt about it. And if you don't think so, then in my opinion, you're just being a Kinks musical snob, really. Gotta be honest with you. I can't believe that people would listen to Sleepwalker and Misfits and Low Budget and Give the People What They Want especially, and certainly most of Word of Mouth and part of State of Confusion, and not think these are incredible albums. They are. Now, they're not quite as Kinks-like as those early albums, you know, where you have Dedicated Follower of Fashion and Sunny Afternoon and some of the other weird, you know, not weird, Kinks, you know, when you think of the Kinks, they have a certain sound, you know, you could really see, you want to experience the early Kinks albums, you know, on a compilation, you get like the Kinks Chronicles, and this is, you know, a really great early summation of their early career. And this stuff is so Kinks-like. It's totally unique. And I get it that this album is more Americanized to a certain extent, but not entirely. But it's snobbery to say, oh, they sold out. He sat down and he wrote these really commercial songs, and that's why they made it. You know what? People write commercial songs all the time, and they don't make it. And in fact, the Kinks did, because State of Confusion was not as successful, even though it had Come Dancing on it. And Word of Mouth died a death. And here's the kicker. I'm going to show you something. Let's throw these over there. Going to show you something. Here's chart positions. Now again, commercial success doesn't necessarily equate with quality. And I love these early Kinks albums. But these early Kinks albums didn't sell for squat. In the United States, they have one right there, King Size, that went top 20. None of the other ones barely went top 100. And in the UK, after Face to Face, they didn't have a top 20 album, and they didn't even chart. Arthur, Lola, the album didn't even chart. The RCA albums didn't chart at all. And here's the kicker. Even these albums, they were the most successful Kinks albums ever in the United States. They died in the UK. They didn't sell at all. And there it is. Sleepwalker peaked at 21. Misfits peaked at 40. Low Budget is their biggest selling album in the United States and probably worldwide. And it didn't even go top 10, as you can see. Low Budget peaked at 11 in the United States. None of these albums charted in the UK. Give the People What They Want, 15. Say the Confusion, I'm wrong, went to 12. And Word of Mouth, 57. Think Visual, that's the MCA years. So that was it. They've never had a top 10 album in America. And they deserved it with these albums. But they finally were able to sell arenas, at least for a couple of years. And it was a fantastic time, the best time, to be a fan of the Kinks. And my timing was great because I was young. In 1979, when they finally broke, I was able to see them live, and I was only 16 years old, but I was a big Kinks fan. I knew the early stuff, I knew the RCA stuff, and I knew those albums up to that point as well. And here is from my original concert book. Let me show you. There's the Kinks and Ian Hunter live. There's a ticket stub. Where does it say? Special guest, Kinks and Ian Hunter with Mick Ronson, July 27, 1979, 10th row at the Nassau Coliseum. This is from my legendary contact book, and the tickets were $8.50. And then I saw them their next go-round. Same place, Nassau Coliseum. There is the Kinks with special guest John Cougar, October 26, 1980. That's the Give the People What They Want tour, and they played 7 encores apparently. So there you go. You could see my REO Speedwagon, I guess was the next show I saw. So I've seen the Kinks so many times, and then Ray Davies so many times. Here's another one I saw. This was the RCA years, I guess. But I mean the MCA years. But this was the Kinks at the Beacon Theater. And that's the next time I saw them. And that was, what year is that? That's March 16th, 1987. And Peter Himmelman was the opening act. So there you go. So yeah, I am a huge Kinks fan. I always say they're my second or my third favorite band. They're tied with The Who. I can't decide because they're so different. The Kinks have more great songs, in my opinion. For me, they're more. I just love the Kinks so much, but they're spread out over a huge discography that's very spotty. And The Who basically have a lot less albums, but their albums are a lot tighter and really better. But I will say that I love. If I was going to rank these Arista albums, if you want to get them, my number 1 would be Sleepwalker. My number 2 would be Give the People What They Want. My number 3 would be Low Budget. After that, I'd probably go with Misfits, because the highs are so high on that album. Rock and Roll Fantasy and the title track's incredible. And then I'd go Word of Mouth, and probably State of Confusion's my least listened to out of these. And then the live album is fine if you like your double live records. But the Kinks. And I just felt the need. And at that time they were doing videos. Here's a cool collection of their videos on Laserdisc. Come Dancing with the Kinks. And there's the track listing. These were really good videos. Come Dancing, Predictable, Lola's Live. State of Confusion's a fun video. Don't Forget to Dance, incredible. You Really Got Me's live. Celluloid Heroes is live. And Do It Again is that great video in the London Tube Underground. That's a great video if you never saw that. So there you have it, folks. The Kinks, my second or third favorite band. And the point is, don't just write off this incredible period when they were really commercially successful as a sellout. I goddamn hate that. They weren't a sellout. They didn't even still go top 10. But at least they were finally able to play some arenas. And most importantly, the quality on these albums is incredible. You know, I saw a different video where some guy was saying the best period was these RCA albums. Now I'm telling you, I know every damn song on these albums, inside and out. But if you honestly are going to sit there and tell me that these albums, Preservation, holds a candle to any of these albums, then I will respectfully disagree to the day I die. Because these albums are so on another par compared to these albums. And Muswell Hillbillies is a fine album. And Everybody's in Showbiz was my very first Kinks album. This is a really good record. But these albums are typically pretty great. Give them a shot if you haven't. Let me know what you think, Kinks fans, or if you're not a Kinks fan and you want to get into the Kinks, go pick up one of these. There's lots of different versions of these Arista collections. Come Dancing with the Kinks is a really good way to start for these. Get Sleepwalker, get Low Budget, give the people what they want. And if you like those, you can check out Misfits, State of Confusion, Word of Mouth. And of course, if you don't know the early Kinks stuff, the classic Kinks stuff, you need to get like the Kinks Greatest Hits up there, or Chronicles is a great one. There's a ton, an endless amount of Kinks collections. This is the best one of them all. The Kinks Ultimate Collection, which is virtually all of it is pretty much the 60s stuff, but it does start adding in, there you go, Better Things, Come Dancing, Don't Forget to Dance, Living on a Thin Line, Do It Again, Celluloid Heroes. This is the best way to get into Kinks, and I think it's probably still out there somewhere. This is the one to get. In fact, I listen to this one the most. When we go for car rides, this is the one I grab. So there you go. All right, let me know what you think. As always, if you're new to my channel, hit subscribe. Check out my playlist. I have a playlist there called My First Blank Album. It was suggested by a viewer named Tom. And I tell the story how I got into certain bands and the first albums I got. There is one on the Kinks in there. And then I have discographies by artists. And there's a video I show every Kinks album. And I tell you my favorite songs. That's a good one as well. All right, enough of my yap, and have a great day. Hope you had a good weekend, and I'll see you next time on the Alan Rosenberg Show.